Welcome to the American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery podcast series. I'm your host, Carla Medlenka. Our team creates each episode to help busy otolaryngologist head and neck surgeons learn more about their exams, continuing certification, and the process and requirements of board certification. If you are planning to take the oral certifying examination, you should find a lot of helpful information in this podcast from ABOHNS Diplomates who have recently taken the exam. Also joining us is our oral exam coordinator. Let's meet our three guests now, Dr. Tyler Bertroche, Dr. Jenny Chen, and Rosa LaNeve. Welcome, Dr. Bertroche. Dr. Chen, congratulations on your certification.
Thank you so much. Very glad to be here.
Thank you for having us.
So your professional paths are a bit different. Can you tell us about your practice and when you took the oral exam? Dr. Bertroche, you want to start?
So I graduated residency in June of 2020 during the pandemic. And so my oral examination was pushed back approximately 1 year. So I took the examination in October of 2021, the year after graduation. I'm currently practicing as a comprehensive otolaryngologist in Des Moines, Iowa.
I took the exam a few months after graduating from residency in 2021. I was spending the year as a kind of a gap year. I was a comprehensive otolaryngologist part-time at the Mass Eye and Ear, and I was doing a full-time master's in education. And so I took the comprehensive exam at that time, which was great because I was practicing general ENT. Currently, I'm a neurotology fellow at Johns Hopkins University.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce Rosa. She's my colleague at the board, and she works directly with our candidates. Welcome, Rosa.
Hi, Carla, and hi, Dr. Bertroche and Dr. Chen. I'm happy to join you guys today.
So Rosa, I know you get a lot of questions from candidates who are preparing for the oral exam. Before we jump into those, let's start with the tool that you've created to answer most of their questions as they come up, the candidate guidelines.
The candidate guidelines are a very effective tool. It was created by years of having oral exams. We've changed it to a virtual oral exam, and it's pretty much a guide for candidates to give them knowledge on how to best prepare for the exam. The guidelines also serve as a timeline. So when candidates want to know about the town hall orientations or check-ins, it really helps them about what dates to expect information coming out from the board.
So I really enjoyed the guidelines provided because it essentially allowed you to see in black and white all of the logistics that were required in preparing for and ultimately taking the oral examination.
I was really careful to read about the exam technology requirements because I was planning to travel for the exam, and I wanted to know, whether my laptop would be okay, what kind of video device I would need, things like that.
So did you do your candidate check-in, Dr. Chen?
Yes, I did. I did that at my home actually, but I let the person checking me in know that I was planning to travel during the exam, but I would be at a hotel room, which they actually felt was a really good option because nothing in their room would be personal to me.
Rosa, do you want to speak a little bit about the candidate check-in?
The candidate check-ins, this is really a really helpful thing to do because this way, at the time of the exam, you are prepared with the technology requirements that are required in the guidelines. So what it happens in the check-ins is we basically see you check in with one of our staff members using the computer you're going to use for the exam. This check-in process also kind of gives the candidate an idea of what the exam environment's going to be like when they come into the exam room.
So I found the check-in process to be a great stress reliever. Essentially, I had been using a MacBook Pro for the past 5 years. And something that kept arising was that there wasn't enough memory. And so every few minutes, there would be a warning or an update saying that I needed to make more space on the drive. And so that was kind of a stressor thinking about during the examination if something like that were to arise. So I actually took the opportunity around the preparation time to go out and get a new laptop, basically because I didn't want to be having that in the back of my mind to worry about. So I had actually done two different check-ins. The first check-in I had performed with my initial MacBook Pro. And just to be doubly sure, when I upgraded to a new MacBook, I wanted to test everything again. And so I went back and did another check-in, which was kind of a great peace of mind to know that everything was up and running.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I know that during the check-in, the candidates learn how to disable some notifications, and, you have updates that pop up every so often. So that's a really good point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, similarly during my check-in, for me, it was going to be the environment that was going to be different for me on the day I was traveling. So I was happened to be traveling the weekend that I was supposed to be doing my oral exam, and I got a lot of peace of mind knowing that the check-in person was okay with me using a depersonalized hotel room, and they gave me good tips about you have to cover up all the screens with like sheets. And so that morning of the exam, I felt very prepared, having, fully complied with all the guidelines.
Obviously, taking the oral examination is kind of a nerve-wracking experience. It's something new and something that you have to get through. So I wanted to make sure that there were no impediments outside of my control that would kind of affect my examination day. So thinking about my examination location, initially I'd assumed I would take it in a study I essentially have in my home. But because the internet in my area was undergoing some renovations, I was concerned that during the examination of all times, the internet would go out and I'd be in the middle of the test. And so I picked the surest bet, which was my office at work, which is essentially attached to a hospital, which has extremely good high-speed internet, which is very reliable. And so I really kind of was very deliberate in picking the location with the perfect environment, closed room, high-speed, reliable internet, new laptop that's going to work without any interruption. And importantly, I have two young children. So if I was taking the examination at home, I didn't want to be hearing things down the hallway. So I knew that taking the examination on a Saturday in my office at work when nobody else would be there would be the most effective, efficient, quiet, and stress-reducing location to take the examination. And so I was very glad that I picked that spot, and everything went very smoothly because I'd done the check-in and thought about these things preparing for the exam.
Very good point. Thank you for sharing that. It is important to spend some time planning your virtual exam environment. Dr. Chen, I know you were in a hotel. What was that like? Because it is something that our candidates do, right, Rosa? They do take the exam in hotels.
They do. They take the exams in hotels, and what typically happens when they do choose to go to a hotel room is they have to ensure, and it is their responsibility to make sure that the hotel has reliable internet connectivity. And typically, the candidate does call ahead to the hotel and say, is the Wi-Fi well? Or they'll go to the lobby of the hotel and check out the Wi-Fi with their computers. So they do prepare for that.
I also paid for upgraded internet because the $10 was worth it. I do say, because I was traveling, I had a backup plan, which I think is essential. I already had arranged the office of a medical center to use if the hotel didn't have fast enough internet the night before.
No, I should also add that I also had a backup plan if my office internet or I couldn't get into the building or something like that didn't work, where I would essentially go next door to the hospital and find a room available there. So I think thinking through all the different plan A scenarios and then subsequent plan B and C scenarios is good. Not that they're going to happen, but it's also for peace of mind so that come examination day, you have all your ducks in a row.
I think also a good point Rosa mentioned, if you are traveling, to a different time zone or out of the country, be sure that you have the exam time correct.
That is right, Carla. Great point. So our exams are always in Central Time Zone. All the times that are on the guidelines, and it is reiterated in the guidelines, they're all in Central Time.
So Rosa, tell us about some things to avoid on exam day.
So as we were talking previously, if you're using an office or a hotel room, please don't lock yourself out. Going to that 5-minute, the break that you have in between the exam to go to the bathroom. So we have had instances where candidates are nervous, or they don't think about the lock and have had to and got locked out. Candidates are given knowledge about how to change their screen name on Zoom. We did have an incident where the screen name was a totally different, or examiners do not know candidates by their name. They know them by an oral exam ID, and that's what they are supposed to come in with. So we do advise candidates to check their Zoom information the night prior, and go to the Zoom profile name and change it to their oral exam ID name. That way, when they come in the morning, they don't have to worry about changing their name. They go in to see the proctor and their name's already changed to the oral exam ID. Examiners never see their name or any personalization of that.
Do we need to talk about Zoom at all? Because there is that element of knowing how to use Zoom, and also maybe the visuals, who's controlling the visuals.
Yeah, I think that, one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that most people became very or too familiar with Zoom. And so that in and of itself wasn't a daunting thought to have to take an examination via Zoom. But certainly in the actual virtual environment of the oral examination, there are some nuances as to how to look at things and click things and circle certain things that they may ask you to do. And so I think that also was a very good benefit of doing the check-in process, is that you can actually see what that would look like and kind of go through those steps in real life, so that come examination day, there's nothing surprising about what you're seeing or what you need to do or circle or what have you.
I felt very prepared after the check-in, as Tyler said. I think that while I was studying, I got more into the habit of thinking about looking at image that someone else was driving. So when I was practicing cases with my co-residents, we would do very short, compact cases the way that we knew we would have to do on the day of the exam, including letting someone else drive the images when there were any. So I felt like we were really trying to simulate it. And we got all this information, of course, from both the check-in and the guidelines.
So in addition to the check-in and the guidelines, there's also an orientation that Dr. Newsombaum hosts. And I know that that is an opportunity for candidates to ask questions and learn some additional important information. Do you remember attending those, Dr. Chen?
Yes, I remember attending it. I think it was a good opportunity to go through sort of the whole big picture of the exam day. And Dr. Newsombaum did walk us through sort of the general exam format and sort of the timing of the events. And then I think that was a good opportunity for us also to ask any questions we had. I don't think I had any specific questions, but other people in the group had some after reading the guidelines.
Dr. Bertroche, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would second what Dr. Chen had just mentioned. As the inaugural class taking the virtual examination, I thought that hearing logistically how the examination would run, and then also importantly, hearing all the questions, I thought was very beneficial as far as kind of mentally preparing for the examination and logistically preparing for the examination. So I would certainly recommend attending those.
So the candidate orientation, that's a really good point. Yes, it does give more of the guts of what the exam is. The questions and answers that people might not want to ask are asked and answered right on live during the orientation.
So just in hindsight, thinking back, Dr. Bertroche, is there anything you would do differently to prepare for your oral exam?
Honestly, there would be nothing that I would change in particular. I had just a very regimented study plan, plenty of time to study, and then I was, very deliberate attending the orientations that were available and just kind of mentally preparing for the examination. All that preparation and thinking through the logistics of the internet and the computer use and the location and things that could come up prior to the examination, I think led to a very smooth and successful examination day. And so there wouldn't be anything in particular that I would change, but I would just definitely encourage people taking the examination in the future or listening to this podcast, definitely kind of taking the time to go through those steps just to maximize the chance of success on that exam day.
Anything to add, Dr. Chen?
I don't think I would have done anything differently. I spent about 6 weeks preparing for the exam. And then every single week, I would meet with my co-residents on Zoom to practice as if we were doing the exam for each other based on the areas that we were the most comfortable with. And so my facial plastics co-resident would do the facial plastic sections with me, and I would do the otology sections with him. I think that was super useful because one of the hardest parts of the exam is how fast it goes, and really being very fluent in the different parts of each case, starting with the history and the physical, and then being able to move through extremely quickly when prompted and when guided by your examiner. I think that towards the end, we were very conscious of making the cases just about 10 minutes each.
Well, it seems like we've hit on a lot of important topics to help candidates prepare for the oral exam. I thought it might be interesting to ask each Dr. Chen and Dr. Bertroche for just one piece of advice that you might have for a candidate who is preparing for the oral exam. Dr. Chen?
I would say that my one piece of advice is to relax and be forgiving of yourself during the day, because you don't have to be perfect, right? Like if one case doesn't go well, just take a deep breath because the next case is going to come by in just a couple of minutes, and just take the opportunity to reset yourself. I think it can be daunting to go from one case to the next case, and then if you feel like you bombed one of them, for that to carry on into how you perform in the following. So I would just say, relax. The cases go by really fast. And if you struggle with any one of them, that's okay, because there are a lot of them, and you can hopefully redeem yourself as the day goes on.
Dr. Bertroche?
Yeah, I strongly agree with what Dr. Chen just mentioned. I think entering the examination with confidence about taking the test, that you know the information, you've studied the information, and it's essentially just putting the pieces together, answering the questions, and then, of course, being forgiving with yourself. It's a quick examination, so it goes by pretty fast and furiously. So giving the amount of information that you have available, keeping on top of the point, and just showing the examiners all of the years of information that you've gathered after completing ENT head and neck surgery residency, I think is probably one of the best pieces of advice I have for people going into the examination.
Good advice. I'd like to thank you all. I'm sure our future diplomates will find this information very helpful.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Bertroche and Dr. Chen, for really helping us out and giving us great advice. Thank you so much.
You can learn more about the Oral Certifying Exam on our website, ABOHNS.org, or call our office 713-850-0399. We hope you found the information in this podcast helpful, and all of us at the board wish you the very best as you take your oral exam. Thanks for listening.